So today we're going to talk about overcoming selfishness and pride, and we will focus primarily on pride because selfishness is a consequence of pride. So pride is the beginning. So we're going to seek to understand what pride is, and I found this quote that I like very much, and that hopefully by the end we'll have a full understanding what it really means. It says that pride will always be the longest distance between two people. Pride will always be the longest distance between two people. And to start our reflection, and just to know, it comes from 4 books of the codification: posthumous work, not yet translated to English, Genesis, the Spirit's book, and the Gospel. And we also touch in the psychological series of Suzana de Angelis and a little bit of Emmanuel. So we're going to start with question 793 of the Spirit's book. It's under the law of progress. And there, the Spirits tell us that a complete civilization is recognized by its moral development. You can only call yourselves civilized when you have finally banished the vices from your society that dishonor it, and when you finally live as brothers and sisters by practicing Christian charity. So first interesting thing for us to analyze, the Spirits are not telling us that a civilized society is one where intelligence prevails. It's telling us that a complete civilization is recognized by its moral development. So Kardec, when he comments the answer by the Spirits, he will say that when you compare two different cultures, the more advanced one will always be the one which has the least amount of selfishness, cupidity, and pride. So if you put two cultures together, if you want to know which one is the more advanced, you look at which one there's less selfishness and less pride, and you will know which one is more developed. That's not usually the standards or the parameters that we use, right, to define what is a civilized culture. But those are the parameters given by the Spirits to Allan Kardec. When we go to Genesis chapter 18, the end of times, the signs of times, the Spirits tell us that we have indeed made considerable progress, intellectual progress. And because of the intellectual progress that we have made, we have conquered material well-being. So that's easy to see. We are here sitting, we have electricity. We no longer need to make fire in order to see. We have air conditioning in a very hot day. So we have accomplished material well-being. We have, with the use of our intelligence, developed the means where we can live comfortably. If not everybody lives comfortably, it's because our moral development is lagging behind in such a way that we don't share the material well-being more equally. But the intelligence has granted us the ability to have the comfort that we share today. However, a little bit more ahead in the same chapter, there is a very meaningful sentence that reminds us that intellectual progress is powerless to regenerate humanity. Intellectual progress is powerless to regenerate humanity. And there is a lot of progress still to be made in our society in order to achieve what the Spirits call moral well-being. So we have achieved material well-being through the use of our intelligence. And now we need to seek moral well-being. And how is moral well-being defined? They define it to us by making charity, fraternity, and solidarity reign amongst humanity, amongst human beings. So the day that we have in our society charity, fraternity, and solidarity amongst ourselves, we will be living in a complete civilized world, because we're going to have material well-being and we are going to have more well-being, which is necessary for happiness and for peace. When we go to posthumous work, where there's actually a chapter that's called Overcoming Pride and Selfishness, and that's where the study comes from primarily, the main source, there are 2 chapters. One is Pride and Selfishness, and the other one is Liberty, Equality, and Fraternity. And in these 2 chapters, the spirits explore the idea on how it is impossible, contradictory, to want to have a society with fraternity and solidarity when we have still selfishness and pride prevailing in our humanity. These 2 feelings cannot coexist. They're actually inversely proportional, meaning that we can make many lectures about equality, fraternity, and solidarity. We can raise flags and we can dream about it, but the reality is it's not achievable as long as pride and selfishness prevail in our society. And when I say it prevails in our society, it means it prevails within us, because we are the components of the society. So in order to talk about and to dream and to wish to be part of this different world where there's truly more solidarity and fraternity, we need to be able to identify the manifestations of pride in our lives, understand where it comes from, and understand the ways in which we can overcome. Because fraternity, the spirits tell us, is that moment where you say one for all and all for one, where selfishness says, I'm doing for myself, right? So fraternity calls for, the definition of fraternity is devotion, abnegation, tolerance, benevolence, and indulgence. You need all that in order to truly live in a fraternal relationships. Fraternity means equal rights and duties for all individuals. Fraternity means that we need to be able to look at any person, and wish for that person that he or she has the same level of well-being that I have. But we have to realize that in order to do that, we may have to give up some of our privileges. Because fraternity calls for no privilege and no exceptions. Sit with that for a moment. So true fraternity and true equality calls for giving up some of our own comfort so others can be more comfortable. Are we ready for it? It's so easy to talk about it. The question is, are we truly ready? Do we truly recognize on you, a brother and sister, as my siblings are my brothers and sisters? Do I act towards you with the same way that I would act towards them? Because that's the ultimate goal. Is that we as immortal spirits, we can see beyond the bloodly ties, and we can see the spiritual ties, and we can recognize that we are all brothers and sisters and all entailed to have the absolutely same well-being. And it doesn't matter who you are or where you stand in your evolution, you deserve it. You deserve it in the same way that I deserve it. Now, pride calls for separation, because pride is that feeling of superiority. And so every time I feel superior, I feel distant. Pride calls for segregation, for prejudice, for discrimination. And ultimately, like I said, for separation, it distances us one from the other. Because pride is more concerned about being right than to doing the right thing. I may know what's the right thing to do, but it's more important for me to be right. Pride calls for acknowledgement, for power. Pride calls to be seen, to be adored, to be acknowledged, to be on top, to be recognized. For all those things. Pride calls for competition. If I am competing, it's hard for me to feel that if I'm competing with you, that you should be in the same place that I am, that we can actually share the same place. One doesn't need to be on top of the other. So it's very complex, right? So we have here a standoff between what we desire to see happening and where we stand in our level of evolution. So how do we solve this standoff? How do we go about it? So when you go to Genesis chapter 18, the spirits tell us that humanity needs nowadays not only the development of our intelligence, but the elevation of our sentiment. And for this, for us to be able to elevate our sentiment, we must do away with everything that incites their selfishness, our selfishness, and our pride. So it's interesting again, because the spirits are not telling us, okay, in order to elevate your sentiment, get rid of selfishness and pride, because they do recognize that selfishness and pride are a superficial manifestation of a deeper problem. Selfishness and pride are behaviors, are symptoms of something much deeper. So the resolution is to target what incites the selfishness and the pride, is to understand, is to do what I like to say, a root cause analysis, and try to figure out what is the root of the problem so that we can solve the problem. So what we're going to do in the next 20, 30 minutes is to try to define and to correlate pride and selfishness, look at the possibility of different causes and how it manifests, and also implement some solutions for this problem, okay? So we start with posthumous work again, and there the spirits tell us that selfishness, again, has its origin in pride, is a consequence of pride. They are both born from the instinct of conservation, and I will get a little deeper into this idea because there lies one of the first causes for the manifestation of pride and selfishness. And it defines pride as being the exaltation, the exacerbation of the personality, which leads one to consider himself better than another person. So, a proud person is incapable to, or has a very difficult time in perceiving that the other may have the truth or part of the truth, or a proud person is very limited to his or her ability to learn because it does not conceive that anything other than what he or she thinks can possibly be a viable option in terms of thinking. Now, if I ask yourselves, right, because this is really important, are you a proud person? And let me just put it this way, there is positive pride, right? When you overcome an obstacle, right, and after hard work, now it's May, you go to Facebook, many people graduating, right? And proud parents, they should be proud. They should be proud. It's being a great investment of love, of time, and so there is such thing as positive pride. But that's not what we're talking about. So, pride. Are you a proud person? Some people may say, no, I don't think so. No, I don't see that. Some people can say, I think so, but how? Do you recognize the manifestation of pride in your life? So we need to understand how pride manifests, so that we can get the work started by understanding. So here are some examples of behaviors in which pride is the underlying feeling. Fault finding. All right, so we have a problem, it's someone else's fault. So whenever we're involved in a problem, usually there is shared responsibility in problems and in conflicts. The inability to see our own part in the conflict is a sign of pride. It's a blindness. You're in a conflict is formed by two people with shared responsibility. Pride makes you unable to distinguish your own contribution to the problem. Defensive, huge. One who is self-centered does not need to defend. Defensiveness, aggression, hostility are signs of pride. Hunger for attention and respect. A person who does not have self-respect wants the world to respect him or her, and comes from a place of pride. Anger. Anger is a manifestation of pride because it means that your ego has been hurt, and is an ego that usually cannot be questioned, cannot be opposed. And so anger is very often a manifestation of pride. Perfectionism. I don't have enough time to talk in details about each one of them, but the idea is just to give you some hints on how pride is manifest in your lives. Being unable to work on the others. It is my way or no way. Being consumed by what others think. So when someone says something about you, you can no longer sleep because you have a lot of feelings about that. When you are devastated by criticism, a good sign of pride. Being sarcastic, degrading, or hurtful. So that's a counterattack, right? So you were trying to boost your ego by diminishing others with sarcasm. Being patient and irritable with others, which means that you feel that you're better. Why are they so slow? Why are they so stupid? So it's a clear manifestation of our sense of superiority. Resentment, it's a clear manifestation of pride as well. Very good. So now if I ask you, are you proud? You might have some better cues on the ways in which your pride manifests. So we all have a lot of work to do. That's the bottom line. What are the causes, right? So looking at the emotional realm, and for didactic purposes only, everything that I'm going to say is a spiritual cause. But just for the sake of understanding, I'm going to break it in spiritual, in evolutionary, in emotional, evolutionary, and spiritual causes, okay? So in terms of emotion, if you have been here, 2 weeks ago I did a lecture about good and evil, and I touched very briefly on this subject. Joana de Angelis explains from the idea of our separation from God, right? So we are so distant from God. We feel so separated from God, right? So this is the core issue that we all experience. During the course of our many incarnations, our many lives and experiences, we develop our ego. The ego is a psychic entity. It doesn't exist. It's not like a concrete material thing. It's a psychic entity, right? And it's there to pretty much manage our learning experiences. So the more I think about it, the easiest way for me to understand this concept is this. Let's say I open a company and I'm the owner, I have a vision, and I hire Biga to be my manager, okay? So she is there to manage the day-to-day operations and to make sure that my vision is passed on to the company. But one day, she feels very devalued. She feels that she's not being recognized for the work that she's doing, and she feels separated from me, right? So that initial trust and bond that we have, it's a little losing now. So she decides that forget about Suzana, I'm gonna implement my own vision. And now she starts acting based on her own vision, disconnect from my vision, the vision of the owner. This is the relationship of a dysfunctional ego and the self. The self owns the company. The self is where the divine seeds are. And so now the ego, Joana de Angelis uses an expression that it says, in certain phase of the development, the ego becomes corrupted by the excess of itself and takes over the company, forgetting that there is an owner, forgetting that there is a self, forgetting that there is a divine. Now, A balanced ego, the ego itself is not, as we have mentioned before in other opportunities, is not a bad guy, is not a toxic entity. The ego is just this manager whose function is to bear the feelings and to manage them, to shed light on them, and to grow from them. But because some of these feelings are very disturbing, when you are separated from God, we feel and we experience a deep sense of scarcity, of lack, and a lot of times we experience ourselves as being inadequate, and we all share as humanities a very disturbing feeling. That's the feeling of shame. Shame. We are ashamed of ourselves. We are ashamed of our physical bodies sometimes. Another day I heard someone, very good friend of mine, who says, I will not wear a bathing suit in the beach because she's ashamed of her physical body. Because the physical body says something to her about her value as a human being. So we share a lot of these feelings, and those are feelings that are difficult to bear. So the ego, instead of doing its work, which is to embrace, to understand, to care, and to love for the self, right? It goes into this pathological behaviors. Pathological in the sense they're unloving. It's a better word. It goes into these unloving behaviors. And so, ultimately, it makes us behave in selfish ways, because when you feel that you lack something, your next behavior is to take. We want to take. We want to take the recognition. We want to take the title. We want to take the position because we feel deep inside that we lack. So we are unable to share. We're unable to share this space. Recently, I heard a story of two people who worked together in a project. This is a real story. And it just happens in the Spirits movement, unfortunately. But they work in a project together. But one person did the majority of the work, let's say 90% of the work. And the other person helped wrapping up the project. And next thing we know, the second person, who just did that 10%, exposed the work and took full credit for it. So when we talked to the person who had done the whole work and said, how do you feel about it? The person said, well, I've done my work for Jesus, and Jesus knows what I did, and so let it be. Now, this is a person who was what? Self-centered, right? Centered, so it's not, because if the person was in this place of frailty and lack, he probably would say, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna fight. Because how come someone is taking credit for my work? How come? That's us. That's us. How come someone is taking credit for my work? But who do you work for? Who do you work for? In terms of our evolution, we can think of the instinct of conservation, which I mentioned before. So we spend an incredible amount of time in our early phases of evolution fighting for our lives. So God gave us the instinct of conservation. It's a good thing. It's a necessary thing because we need to survive. And so in our first lives as human beings, we spend pretty much 100% of our times trying to survive. Today, we don't spend 100% of our times trying to survive. No one wakes up and thinks, I hope to be alive by the end of my day. No. I mean, unless something happens or we're sick or whatever, you think you go on your day knowing that you will go to bed at night, right? But we still have this instinct very predominant within ourselves, and it manifests itself in moments where it shouldn't manifest anymore, and that's when it becomes problematic, and that's when it becomes a little harmful for our evolution. So when I was reading this, it made me think of my kids. So they get along pretty well, but they're siblings. And so what do? They do tattletale. That's an expression that I didn't know until I had kids. Tattletale. So one gets up and comes and says, Mommy, Jake is doing this. And Tati comes, Mommy, Tati is doing this. And what we tell them is, okay, unless your brother or your sister is in danger, it's something really, really important that you think they're going to get hurt, come and tell us. Otherwise, don't do that. Don't do that. Because there's no reason for you to be telling on your brother and your sister. But the little kids do that. Why do they do that? They want to get their sibling in trouble. And they want to be the good ones. We do the same thing. We are spiritual children. We do the same thing. Because we think that in the heart of our Father, there is only place for one. Us, preferably. So you tell your kids, in my heart, there is a place for both of you equally. You're both important, you're both special, and you're both deserving of my love. And in God's hearts, there is a place for all of us. So we don't need to compete. We don't need to be on top. We don't need to be more special than anyone else. Everyone can be special together. How about this concept? But it is so incredible how it manifests. So I have a friend, and we have a very close relationship, a friend in Brazil. And she's a little bit more jealous in relation to our friendship than I am. And so, once in a while she makes some comments, jealous comments. And another day I saw many pictures of her with another person, another girlfriend of hers. And I sent a WhatsApp and I said, oh my God, I'm so jealous of this person. And she replied and said, finally. Now, I think we were both playing, but not really, right? So there is a playfulness to the story, but there is also that human need to feel special. I want to be your best friend, and God forbid you have another best friend. I do not want to share that best friend spot. Otherwise, I'm no longer the best friend. I'm half best friend. So that is just to give some examples. Because it's very difficult for us to only think in philosophical terms and know what to do once we leave here. We need to be able to take our daily lives in these moments and think, what do they mean? And life is full of these little moments. If we are awake, if we are truly committed to pay attention to what's going on in our lives, we'll have so many hints on how our disconnection from God manifests in our daily lives. Very well. And then finally, we have what the Spiritist philosophy tells us, which is this unawareness of our immortality, of our origin, our past, and our destination, our future. You may say, no, not me. I am an immortalist. Yes, you believe in the immortality of the soul, but you don't live like an immortal spirit. Not yet. We are all practicing this concept, but we don't really have it ingrained, not really within ourselves. If we had, we probably wouldn't be here anymore. So we identify very much with the things of this world. And that's one big way in which we can say that we are not living like immortal beings. So in posthumous work, the spirits tell us that one of the main causes for selfish and pride is the fake idea that we have of our nature, of our past and our future. So once we are incarnated here, we share this spiritual blindness. We are in such a dense body that is very difficult to feel immortal. And so it says, unaware where he comes from, man believes to be more than he is. So we have a past that right now, because of the mercifulness of God, is veiled to us. None of us know the amount of unfinished business that we still have to take care of. Because God is so incredibly merciful and good that he gives us time, and gives us time to build the resources and the strength, a lot of times, to face the trials that lay ahead of us, so that we can find the balance, regain the balance, rehabilitate ourselves in regards to many mistakes that we have done in the past. So we are blind. We are completely blind to the work that still needs to be done. We also many times get a little carried over by the progress that we make. And we think that we are doing really good when it comes to the development of certain virtues. But question 895 of the Spirit's book, when Kardec asked the spirits, what is the most characteristic sign of imperfection? And the Spirit says that it is self-interest. Then they go on and they say that we may have some real qualities that might have others thinking that we are virtuous. But these qualities that are a sign of progress often are impotent when personal interest is involved. So it's not that we're not making progress. It's not that we haven't really learned anything, but it's not yet rooted. You see, it's frail. Because when our personal interest is affected, it all, like, those buildings that collapse, boom. That's pretty much what happens. And so we have to be, if you want to know if you're really virtuous about something. I'm very charitable. I'm very loving. Wonderful. Can you be just as loving with someone who does not think that you are that much of a person? Then you have a lot of work to do. Because, even the hypocrites or the Pharisees, they're loving with the ones they're equal to them. So there's not much to be proud of when it comes to that, because we're no different than the ones who we consider to be evil. They love their own. So how good is that? But the Spirit says that it's not only about not knowing the past, it's also not knowing the future, right? So we believe that there is a future, but this belief is not powerful enough to, a lot of times, shift the importance that we give to the little quarrels of our day-to-day. We get so caught up in the conflict, we get so caught up in the little insignificant issues of our day-to-day. We make them really huge because the present moment is the only thing that we can foresee. Because if we really had the vision of the immortality, if we really understand that giving up our point of view, if we really understand that forgiving, if we really understand that benevolence will grant us a much, much better place in the future, as it does in the present, we would act differently. But because we lack the vision of immortality and we're stuck in the present moment is all that is. So the lack of the vision, the perception, and the feeling of immortality contributes to the feeling of selfishness and pride. And Joana de Angelis will say, in face of the illusions of its permanence in the physical realm, man attributes perennial values to what is transitory. So we are here, and although we believe in the immortality of the soul, we still identify very much with the things of the world and draw from what is transitory, or try to draw from what is transitory our inner value. And so we identify with things that are external to try to fulfill our inner needs. How? We seek positions, titles, social or religious status, possessions, to keep our bodies in some way, shape, or form, right? So we seek in these very material things ways to fulfill our sense of lack, ways to fulfill our distance from God. And so it becomes a problem. What is then the solution as we come to the end, right? So we have a huge problem in our hands. And the spirits even say in Cosmos' work, they say, you may think that it's impossible to solve this problem, but it's not. Because actually living among you right now, there's a number of people who are very humble. You just don't know them. And they are, for now, the exception and not the rule. So your job is to turn those who are humble into the rule, and the proud into the exception. And the spirits themselves tell us this is possible. So first step is to believe that it is possible. And that we have and we are progressing. So, question 917 of the Spirit's book. What is the means for destroying selfishness? And so it's going to address one of the causes that we talk about. Because it says that Spiritism, well understood, enable us to see things from a more evolved point of view, in such a way that the sentiment of personality somehow disappears before the immensity. Upon destroying self-importance and showing its real nature, Spiritism combats selfishness. So what Spiritism does, it puts life into perspective, right? So at the very end of the day, we are not as big as we think, but we are all equal because we are all divine. The second thing, so the first thing is to continue to work on this vision of immortality. How do you do that? Every single, especially the conflicts, especially the difficult situations, the difficult people, ask yourselves, as a mortal spirit, how should I act? What have I learned from Spiritism? What is the importance of the present moment? What is the importance of this conflict? What is the importance of me to be the right one at the end? And put things into perspective. The second one is to take ownership for our shortcomings. Take ownership for our shortcomings. And so that requires vigilance. I'm sharing with you some stories. I am trying to develop this possibility of seeing. But after seeing, you have to have the courage and the humility to say, I'm not doing a good job here, or where is this coming from? So the next important thing in this process of self-healing is not to judge. Because if you say to yourself, oh, I'm really bad, I'm awful, that's also pride. Because it's your inability to embrace your own humanity. So you need to say to yourself, I am evolving, and here is where I am, and I am going to shed some light on the roots of why am I still needing so much attention, so much recognition, whatever it is that you identify as being something that you need. And last but not least, we are going to strive to continue in the path of elevating our sentiments. And for that, the gospel is full, is an abundance of references. Read about piety, indulgence, patience, and all those beautiful virtues that are described in the gospel with such a poetry. And read about them, think about them, meditate about them. And I'm going to bring one of many that I could talk about, which is abnegation. Now, the opposite of pride would be humility, right? It's to be humble. I came to the conclusion, it's my own conclusion, you don't find in any works of Kardec, that humbleness is not something that I can say, I'm going to live conscious today and I'm going to be humble. Right? So humbleness, in my opinion, is a final outcome of the journey. That's why in the gospel it says there is a very unknown virtue to our humanity. Based on everything that I just said, you can see why it's so unknown. And I think it is an experience of more evolved spirits who have done the work of self-healing. Now, humbleness, I really like this definition, happens when the ego finds the balance between the smallness that it characterizes it and the divine possibilities that it lays within it. So humbleness happens when the ego finds the balance between the smallness that characterizes it and the divine possibilities that lay within it. What does that mean? That means if someone comes to me at my professional job and criticizes me, I'm not devastated because I made a mistake. I don't feel less because someone told me that I made a mistake. I don't feel diminished because someone said that I made a mistake. I feel worth it. I feel divine. I keep myself together and I say, hey, I made a mistake. Let's fix it. Without the load that comes when we are feeling small, diminished by someone who points out a mistake, an error, a human failure. Is that how we usually take criticism? So humbleness is possible when we are no longer needing anything exterior to fulfill our spiritual needs. It's an expression of connection and is an expression of abundance. It's the opposite of scarcity. So when you are connected to God, when you are connected to God both outside and within yourself, when you are sure of your value as a human being, you live in a state of abundance. And in this state of abundance, you realize that no matter what, you're worthwhile. You are divine. So there are many passages on these books that talk about humbleness. And I'm going to bring posthumous work when it says, charity and fraternity summarize all the conditions and social duties for peace to prevail among men. One and the other call for abnegation. Now, abnegation is defined as self-denial and renunciation of privileges. Some people may have a difficult time understanding what self-denial is. It means, should I not love myself, right? That's not what self-denial means. Now, we'll get there. In the gospel, for instance, chapter 6, it says, devotion and self-denial. Listen to this. These are words of the Spirit of the truth. Devotion and self-denial are a continual prayer, and they contain a profound teaching. Human wisdom, no small thing, resides in these two words, devotion and self-denial. Take these two words as your motto, devotion and self-denial, and you will be strong. For they summarize all the duties that charity and humility impose on you. We don't have much time, but it would be worthwhile to do another lecture just to explore what this sentence means. The Spirit Emmanuel says that abnegation, defining abnegation, says selfless giving, which is one sacrifice for the happiness of others, ennobles the spirit. Question 912 of the Spirit's book says, the practice of abnegation, or self-denial, is one of the most efficacious ways to overcome our corporeal nature, to overcome the prevalence of matter over spirit. Why is it so powerful? And what does that mean? Abnegation and or self-denial. Well, think about this. Jesus is the greatest example of abnegation that we have amongst ourselves. He was living in paradise, let's put it this way, and in order to attain God's will, he left, came to live amongst us, dying on the cross, giving up, let's put it this way, he truly didn't give up anything, but giving up paradise, right? To obey God's command and to serve. Not only he is the greatest example of abnegation, but he also invites us to do the same when he said, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself. Deny himself. So the message is here over and over and over. You can find it in the gospel. You can find it in the Spirit's book, posthumous work, Genesis. It's everywhere. In Acts 20:35, it says, it is more blessed to give than to receive. And this is how we're going to close our lecture today. Abnegation, self-denial, is the shortest path to find God within ourselves. The shortest path to find God within ourselves. And it is just a sacrifice to the ego, but not to the self. So when we practice abnegation and we sacrifice our self-interest, we tap into the divine within us. The sense of lack suddenly disappears. Because by practicing abnegation and self-denial, we find within ourselves resources we didn't know we had. We find God within. And the more we give, the more we realize that we are the ones receiving. So when you sacrifice yourself for the benefit of others, giving up some of your own comfort, some of your own privilege, overriding your ego, you may think that you're losing, but that's an illusion. That's an illusion. Because by practicing abnegation and self-denial again, you tap into this unlimited reservoir of love that exists within you. And you are the first one to benefit from the abundance. So you actually shift from the place of scarcity, from the place of lack, to a place of fulfillment. Fulfillment. Material charity gives us that in a very, very superficial way. Because when we practice material charity, usually we do it for ourselves in first place. And second, we are giving from what we have in superfluous. But when you are able to forgive someone, when you are able to put yourself aside so that the whole can win, you are giving. It is that the offer of the widow's mite. You're giving from what you don't even think you have, just to find out how much you have. And to enjoy finally, this awareness and this feeling of living in abundance and in love, and feeling finally God within yourself. So as the Spirit says, it is possible. It is possible. And what I invite you to do is to try. Just try for one day. Try forgetting about yourself for 1 minute and working to make everybody else around you happy. And you will see that the first one and the one who will benefit the most from your own act is yourself. So thank you. And